Hey, thanks for tuning in. I hope you're having a great day. In Exodus chapter number 14, we see this story that Israel has come out of the land, and the Lord has directed them right to the Red Sea. I want you to see the first part of this chapter. He says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Vihirath, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, Shut them in, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and his host. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. And they did so. So already, after all that they have seen, the Lord isn't finished with humbling them yet. He has one more step to destroy them as a military force, at least temporarily here, and he's going to show that he is the Lord. So how quickly they forget. And yet there's still more lessons for Israel to learn in this journey as well. In verse 5, he says, And when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed towards the people, and they said, What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us? So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and took 600 chosen chariots and all of the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel, while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. And the Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them and camped at the sea. So the Lord could have taken them a different direction, but he purposely took them right to the sea, and he camped them so that they were facing the Red Sea. And then here comes, by the divine appointment of the Lord, Pharaoh with all of his army. They had pushed the people out because they saw the hand of God. And then they forgot and thought, hey, those are our people. What have we done? Why we let them go from serving us? See, the tyrant always sees the slave as a tool, and God sees them as his beloved children in whom he's going to liberate. They were God's children. They weren't Pharaoh's slaves. And so he will bring utter destruction. And then in verse 10, And when Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Wow. They took on a spirit of fear and thought, you know what? Slavery is better than death. Now, I mentioned it before, but I want you to think about it really clearly, because I've been meditating on this over a few days. It was like, once we've been in slavery to anything, but these people were actual literal slaves in Egypt, and they developed over generations a slavery mindset. They thought, well, it's better to be a slave and alive than free. They had learned to be manipulated by the master, who did not have their best interest in mind, but only wanted to use them. But there was a certain comfort in knowing that someone was there to tell you what to do. There was a certain predictability about it. And now God has claimed his people out of slavery and delivered them from tyranny, and yet their enemy comes after them and their response is fear. And whenever you and I develop a spirit of fear because of some circumstances that the enemy has brought before us, and we're fleeing back and thinking, well, it'd be better to be a slave, we've adopted that slavery mindset. And so God reminds us as his children that we need to make sure that we're thinking and have adopted a mindset as that of a child of God. We have to be very conscious of what we're thinking about because we know that we have been delivered from the slavery of sin. Satan, sin, is no longer our master. It's a tyrant that we have been delivered from. People say, well, sin is fun and that's what I want to do. No, sin has certain momentary pleasures, but long-term heartache. It brings about slavery, death, guilt, and shame. And God has redeemed us out of slavery to live as sons. So we got to get rid of the mindset of slave and realize I've been set free. I'm the beloved child of God. And if fear comes upon me, I remember that perfect love casts out fear. Would it be better to die in slavery in Egypt with predictability? Well, I say no. I want to live free. And this was a part of how these people, as they've seen the mighty hand of God in delivering, but they haven't learned to walk with God. They haven't learned to trust him as above all. And in our daily walk, we need to walk with God in such a manner as that we learn to develop a faith that is built on the integrity of God's faithfulness, that he will always be faithful to all of his promises, that when the enemy comes, and he will come, and we will be tempted, and we will be enticed to go back to the old slave master. But he says, you are more than conquerors. This isn't your battle on your own. Let me show you who's fighting for you. And then look at verse number 13. And he says, and Moses said to the people, fear not. Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see never again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. Can you take this promise and hold on to it? Stand firm. Stand firm knowing that Christ in you is fighting for you. Don't let yourself cry out in panic because of the enemy. Affirm the promises of God that you are now a new creature, more than conqueror, beloved, redeemed, and righteous in him, that by faith, through grace in his perfect sacrifice, he lives in you and you in him, and he will fight for you. Only be silent. I told my kids and I told my grandkids, I love you guys so much, and I will always fight for you. And when necessary, I will fight you in order to fight for you. And that's the love that God has for us. He will fight for us. And sometimes he fights us in order to fight for us because we haven't quite gotten rid of that slavery mindset. We're still susceptible to the deceptions of the enemy. And so you renew your mind. Remind yourself of who you are and whose you are, that you are now a slave of righteousness and you belong to no other but your beloved groom. Be encouraged and have a great day.